the New Zealand Tech Podcast, brought to you by Gorilla Technology, proactive and strategic IT.
Hey folks, greetings and welcome along to the New Zealand Tech Podcast. I'm your host, Paul Spain. Today we have guest Daniel Shu from ElementX joining us. Welcome, Daniel.
Hi, Paul. Yeah, great to be here.
Great to have you on the New Zealand Tech Podcast. First time on, so that's exciting. Maybe you can just give a quick intro in terms of where you fit into this big wide world of tech.
Yes, thanks, Paul. Well, I'm sure everyone's kind of thinking about AI lately, given how prominent ChatGPT is out there. So we're a New Zealand artificial intelligence consultancy, and we specialize in helping large organizations manage the customer support, customer service from an automation perspective. So it enables an organization to respond to customer inquiries, requests promptly using a suite of technologies.
Brilliant. I will look forward to hearing more about that during the show. First up, big thank you to our show partners, of course, to 1NZ, 2 Degrees, Spark, HP, and Gorilla Technology. And yeah, let's jump into the news of the week, and then we'll get in and hear more about ElementX. So first up, it caught my attention that the BBC were reporting some interesting comments from Mark Zuckerberg. Not about the upcoming cage fight. Nothing to do with that. But it was to do with Threads, and it referenced effectively that Threads users are down by more than half. So yeah, kind of interesting to see that. But I think, even though it might seem like they're down for the count, I think the scale of user base and power that Meta have amongst their social media users means I wouldn't be writing them off just yet. But I thought, wow, that's probably a big pre-fight blow for Zuckerberg before he even gets in the ring with the real ring. Yes. with Musk. I'm starting to think that cage fight's never going to go ahead, but it's fun to bounce around the thought.
Yeah,
what do you think around this? We were chatting earlier, and I was most impressed to hear you're somebody that manages to keep yourself off social media generally.
Yes, I guess I just try to minimize the amount of social. Obviously, I work in tech, so day in, day out, we've got phone going off or notifications, and sometimes you just want a bit of peace and quiet. The thing with Meta, what I find really interesting is they've just been able to just haul all of their users from other platforms, kind of in a way cheat their way into this 100 million user base so quickly. But I guess a lot of those people, whether they were actually just escaping Twitter, or were they actually do they actually want to go into Threads? So that I guess time will tell.
Yeah, and it certainly will. And I'm not sure that. Yeah, I'm not sure how it's going to play out, but we already have other platforms that have got smaller followings, and they're able to continue going. The question would be is if they don't manage to really lift that engagement and get Threads as a really pumping platform, would they keep it alive if they had a really active 10 million, 20 million, 50 million, 100 million? I mean, where would you draw that line on whether it's actually worth it in the scheme and scale of it for them and so on? And we see so many of the big tech companies that have something that exists, but it maybe isn't really generating a lot of money. Maybe it's generating some, but they will just kick it to the curb to keep focused, right?
You take Microsoft Skype, for example. I know back in the day, everybody's on Skype, and I think there's still probably a cult following at the moment, but it's definitely, I think Teams has definitely trumped come in. And I think for Meta, it's probably a question around how quickly they can monetize the platform, and whether that could be a substantial revenue generating source for them. So I guess at the moment, it's a delicate balance between user experience, earning back the public's trust, before starting to heavily put the monetization engine behind it.
Yeah, I think it will be very interesting to see how the social media sort of world looks in say 5 or 10 years out from where we are now, because it has been a very much an evolving beast, as it were. The power of TikTok. I think most of us didn't really see it coming. I mean, I do remember one of the social media event I was at, sort of, before TikTok was TikTok. It was Musically, and there was a lot of discussion at that point, amongst a small group of people, that, hey, this is the next big thing. And yeah, I mean, it became probably much bigger than what people realized. Another bit of news that caught my attention is that Waymo are effectively putting the brakes on their investment in self-driving trucks. And yeah, this is interesting. Waymo, which is part of Alphabet, and what we used to think of as the Google sort of self-driving vehicles. They're the long-standing player in the world of autonomous vehicles. And the sort of, I guess, my thinking around autonomy, it seemed like trucking would be one of those areas where it could, it would make sense, sort of from a business perspective, to quite quickly implement and invest in autonomy if it were ready and available to be used on the road. So yeah, quite interesting to see Waymo put that division of their business almost on ice. So yeah, it'll be curious to follow where that goes. But it looks like they're really keeping their focus on the robo taxis, which are still quite limited. Was watching a video yesterday from some folks in around the sort of San Francisco Bay Area, and a couple of them were saying, "Hey, we've got Waymo beta access, but it's not available in our neighborhood." Right, so you've got this amazing technology, but it has to be mapped down and totally tuned up for the roads that it's going to go on. Otherwise, it doesn't go there. And then on the the flip side, you've got the competing technologies, like what Tesla are doing, what Mobileye are doing out of Israel. And this move to build a system that can, in theory, operate on any road anywhere. But there's such a big difference between the two in terms of disengagements, as they call it. It's still a one I'm struggling to get my head around, and yeah, the feeling that we've all been oversold on this. What do you think, Dan?
I think the technology is very promising, but obviously still needs a lot of R&D. Probably in terms of Waymo, whether it's a question of minimum efficient scale that they need to reach, or it might be a regulatory barrier. But sometimes you might just have a technological challenge, especially with these. I remember one of the earlier Tesla models, they were susceptible to these adversarial attacks. So essentially, if you go and take a stop sign and you go vandalize the stop sign by drawing particular graffitis or pattern over it, that will confuse the AI. And it will confuse the AI to think that rather than a stop sign, it was actually a speed sign, and it was a speed limit 45 miles per hour. So you can imagine, like, just very subtle edge cases, and there's probably 1,000 or maybe 100 edge cases they've got a program for. So getting all of that right in order to meet the safety requirement, that's a huge challenge.
Yeah, that's a whole nother sort of aspect of it, isn't it? Is the I guess it sort of would fit uh, in a pretty sort of scary bucket. A lot of those things that people could do to track an autonomous vehicle, AI, and yeah, I don't think probably too many of us are keen to see AI coming to market that can be easily tricked, but it's likely just in the same way people get tricked, right? That's the thing when you're trying to create a machine that operates like a human, it's going to be susceptible in the ways that we are. And yeah, I imagine you change a stop sign for say a speed sign, or you take that stop sign down. Yeah, some people are gonna miss the yellow lines. In theory, with an AI, it can be sort of smart enough to pick up a bunch of that stuff. But yeah, I'm sure we're going to have different types of attacks and so on in the future that might be less than ideal. But yeah, let's see how it
Oh
plays
man,
out.
it'll be a cat and mouse game, just like how like scammers are getting better.
Yeah,
And then we got people who are building technology to stop them, and then so it'll be a race.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, I've wondered about those things in the past, but yeah, I kind of quickly go back to well, let's see if they can get this stuff just working for most scenarios, and while there's still a driver in the immediate term, and then they can move on to some of those scarier situations. I guess the reason for that thought around it coming in trucks is just commercially you would think that that's quite viable, but yeah, there's obviously some plus sides of very much focusing on the ride sharing, and I'm picking that that Waymo have got the confidence that's the natural should be their natural focus for scaling. So I guess there's a lot of Uber rides and taxi rides and so on that go on today. So it's and they've been putting a big focus on it. So yep, makes some sense. Now we read about an interesting project where Meta, Microsoft, and Amazon are working together, and it's on. They're part of a group called the Overture Maps Foundation that was formed in 2022, and they've now released their first open map data set. So, basically themselves, TomTom together, collaborating to really take on Google Maps and also Apple Maps to create a platform that developers can use. We've had open street maps available for for a long time, and I think that gets reasonably well utilized, but probably the default go-to is Google Maps, isn't it? When it comes to if you're writing some software and you need a mapping element, that's where you tend to go. And Google have made it quite easy. The initial kind of access and tier is free, and then the costs start coming on if you use it a lot. Why do you think that they've kind of got together on this? Is it that they don't like paying money to Google and that they couldn't individually compete? What do you think?
Yeah, I feel this is a move around owning the customer and owning the customer interaction. Because if you look at maps, like Google has the benefit of advertising through their maps. They could put if you go Google Map and you search for a restaurant or an Italian restaurant, or that's their profit generation engine happening in the background. And I think this is probably where Meta and the other companies are going, well, how can we compete? How do we be in this picture?
Yeah, and from a consumer and even a business perspective, it potentially does create some inconvenience and hassle, because the more platforms there are, the harder it is to know whether you can trust the data, because people mess with it. But most often it is good for there to be a bit of competition out there. And then I guess if you're a business, you've got to make sure you're correct information is going onto all these platforms. So when someone's trying to find you, whether it's Apple Maps, Google, or Overture, then you want to make sure you got the right data on there. Actually, I was in the car with my son a few days ago, and I was on a call, but he keeps pointing at the map, and others might have seen this, right very, very close to Eden Park. I'm just going to jump into Google Maps and see if I can see it. Very close to Eden Park was someone that had presumably put a little bit of a kind of sneaky location in the list, with a bit of a rude word in there. I'm just trying to see if it's still there, but he was keeping pointing at this. What's he pointing at? I was thinking he was trying to maybe encourage me that we should be navigating to, I don't know, particular like a burger chain or something or other, is a favorite destination. And I can't see it on Google Maps, so but I'm pretty sure with Tesla that they're usually drawing on the Google Maps kind of. Oh no, I can see it. I can see it here, actually, right next to I give a SHI. So kind of a just a random. Oh no, look, it looks like it looks like a legitimate entity.
Business,
it's got they make it look like it. Environmental Protection Organization. I'm not quite so sure.
Is it a charity?
There's a landline phone number. There's a URL. It's open 24/7. So I might well be turning up at 34 Bellwood Avenue at 2 a.m. to see whether they are indeed open 24/7. I can't see a company sign outside, but I know they're building a fence here, so maybe now that there is, looking at the street view, a lot of work to build out a maps platform, and then you've got the street view type information and lots of layers. So it will be interesting whether they're able to move a lot of people across to Overture. But I guess if these things are getting used in, say, Facebook, and it's getting used on Microsoft's platforms, Amazon are pushing it through AWS, then you've got to imagine that they're going to gain a reasonable amount of traction, right?
I think the biggest challenge is around device, because most people use their maps on mobile, and you've got your Android and your iOS, who own essentially proprietary maps that they own on their device. So it's going to be a hard battle for a third party to come in and have an end user download from the App Store another app that replaces the default version. There's got to be a really strong value proposition. And I'm just not sure what that is for maps.
I'm not sure if they're going to be targeting that as a mobile app, or whether it's really just there that software developers would use it maybe within their own apps. But that could be part of the mix. And I guess you're more likely to sort of update it if it's an app that you're familiar with and using. But we could see, I guess the likes of Uber and so on, move across if they make it good enough. But you've got to make it really, really good,
exactly,
to convince people to use it. Other story involving Meta is that they've been ordered by Australian courts or their subsidiaries to pay $14 million over some data use. So a subsidiary of them, Israel-based web analytics company Onavo, was something that Facebook acquired about a decade ago, and their story was that they were all about privacy, and Facebook sort of made some commitments But basically they didn't actually behave themselves appropriately, and got slapped with a $14 million fine. Now, for me, the bit of this that stands out is that there's a $14 million fine for a privacy breach, and this is not what we see happening in New Zealand, because presumably that same technology platform which Meta own, more than likely exactly what they were doing in Australia, they're probably doing it in similar, in New Zealand and other markets. And this is to do with their the VPN that they were running. And yeah, it seemed like basically, yeah, Australian users could have been pulled into that, but so could have New Zealand users. So yeah, where's the teeth? Where's the fine for for Meta from New Zealand? And that's probably my concern is that our legislation, um, probably doesn't take some of these things as seriously as it should, and hopefully we can learn some lessons from our friends across the Tasman on that front. What do you think? Is it important that we
Yeah,
keep tightening up and
I think we've got to.
developing our legislation to to make organizations take privacy and cybersecurity more seriously?
I think we're definitely. If you look, $14 million for Meta is like a slap in the wrist. It's
It's nothing. Yeah.
it probably hurt the share price more. And I think we've got to keep these large organizations honest. We've got to make sure that they are adhering to their policies or their commitments to privacy. And wherever they are not honoring that, then someone's got to call them out.
Mm, mm. Um, Now, another thing that caught my attention was a technology company focused on the world of travel, Mondi, Mondee. They've launched a new mobile app and AI chatbot for travel booking. But it just caught my attention because it's quite some time since I've worked with or used a travel agent to do bookings for me, but seeing often the amount of work that does go on with these bookings, some, I don't know if I'm still correct about green screens, but there's still some pretty old school kind of technology, the way the different travel platforms sort of talk to each other and so on. And it just seems like it is really, really ripe for there to be continuous innovation from an AI perspective. So and of course there's some innovation there in terms of travel booking sort of related technologies and so on from this part of the world. But yeah, that one just sort of jumped out as wow. There's so many possibilities for how you can use AI to you give the AI a little bit of guidance where you want to go, when you want to go, what your preferences are, and it should be able to really map out something that's as good as what an individual could do, and then give you an amazing sort of itinerary, suggestions of things to do, all in kind of a matter of milliseconds, right?
That's like, I feel like that's instantaneous. Like we're a generational of like like we want instant gratification, we want instant results. So
Yep.
if you have to wait on the phone for a travel agent to come back with something, and then they have to go run off to a dozen third party sources to get that information for you, that's a lot of time. You got to be very patient for that. But where I think a lot of the power is going to be is around this integration of your preferences. And companies like Google are probably at like the best position to exploit this, because they have my Google Photos album. They know where I've been in the past. They've got my maps history. They know what kind of places I like to visit. So they can probably pull together a better itinerary than anybody else.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely spot on there, because just asking, just going into say a chat bot and saying I want this and that, there's going to be so much that you leave out that's actually important to you that you forget about when you're thinking through how you book travel, how much time you stop in varying places, what sort of accommodation that you like. But if you were to drill through all that knowledge and history, if you can capture that and feed that to the platform as well, that's where you would probably get the real kind of gold in terms of, wow, I couldn't have done that better myself with 100 hours at hand.
Well, they'll have to rewrite
Yeah.
all of their privacy policies though in order to do something like that.
Yeah, well, that's the flip side challenge, isn't it? Is how do you get that without spooking people too much, or do you just make that data available for a very short time, and that gets kept in your own in your own vault? And there've been varying chats around what the role of blockchain might be in these sorts of things in future, and you open up access to a certain bit of information for a certain period of time, it gets utilized, and then it's back under lock and key rather than necessarily a platform having full 24/7, well, through to lifelong storage of your data. So I think there's a fair bit of innovation ahead for in this case with Mondi, they're focusing on the wholesale level, so more on the travel agents as their audience, and I think that's a really important audience to go after. Who it probably makes a lot of sense to focus on that audience at this point in time, because if you can save them an hour and they can get they can do 2 hours work in 1 hour or in half an hour, or however you do that, then it's pretty easy to get paid and get a return for that. But longer term, I think we're going to be expecting this as consumers to have
So
access
they're,
to
they're,
this
they're
level of
essentially
tech.
following the Uber playbook, is sell a productivity tool to help your users. Then they will then use it and help build a self-service version.
Yeah, I would. I think it'll be a bit of a journey for them to figure that out. But they'll probably take advantage of all of the requests that come in from travel agents before
Use that as
technology,
training data.
it gets used to deliver to the broader population. One more topic that caught my attention. I do always love chatting about robots, and in fact, we wandered upstairs in the building and into a firm that's does a bit of work in the robotics space, didn't we? Earlier on.
Yes, so this is quite familiar with this company. Personally worked with them many years ago. It's a company called Power On. It's a spin out of out of the University of Auckland, and really focused around building soft robotics, and robots that can move in an environment where you need to have a degree of I guess when it collides with anybody, that you're not hurting people along the way. And so and that's a whole new game of hardware that needs to be developed. And it's just so cool seeing hardware companies come out of New Zealand, because very rarely you see that.
So we'll have to delve into them another time. But on that robotics topic, was reading around a robot called the Autocado, which takes your avocados and turns them into guacamole. Apparently, this is, or it does part of the process for Chipotle, which is one of the fastest growing fast food outlets in the US. I don't know if you've tasted their food, but I've found it pretty good when I've tried it. Good Mexican, and they're getting the machine to help with the processing, big batch of guacamole, which means dealing with a lot of avocados. So taking the stone or the core out of the avocado, peeling it, and then getting it ready to be, dealt with by a human chef. So it's not doing the whole job, but it's doing probably the a time consuming part of the job that's quite important, and it can deal with about 11 kilos of avocados in a single load. So it goes through and preps up the avocados. So I imagine there'd be a few probably Mexican restaurants around the country in New Zealand that could benefit from that sort of tech. Sounds good. So yeah, the robots continue to roll on, and it's just the latest. Well, let's delve in. I'm really keen to hear a little bit more, Dan, around ElementX, and first off, how did you get started? What was the beginning? What's the founding sort of story?
Well, we started the business about 10 years ago. We initially was in the healthcare IoT space. I'm an engineer by background training, and the problem we were solving at the time was around skin cancer and trying to prevent people from getting sunburned, which leads to skin cancer. And kind of we built our business around that for a number of years. And then in about 2016, we saw this AI wave just come, and the market was reacting. Technology was being built. Businesses were spending more in AI, and so that's when we really decided to double down and building AI tools, technologies, or solutions on a variety of platforms.
Great. And I see from your website, you very much do work across a variety of technology platforms. Partnered with IBM, Google Cloud Partner, Microsoft, and AWS. So you've obviously got a real mix of expertise across a lot of technologies. So you can turn your hands to a range of different directions. But what has been your main focus?
Yeah, our focus kind of in the last couple of years has been more around solving a very specific problem, and that's around customer support, customer service, and more specifically for higher education, so universities. And universities have a really, interesting type of institutional business because their requirements are quite unique to them.
Yep.
They have very predictable but seasonal load, seasonal traffic. They have just a really diverse range of students or customers. You get everything from a high school leaver to a mature student returning back to study. Then you've got international students who English is not the first language. And then you've got such a wide variety of customer support inquiries. So that's quite a unique combination to solve, and I think where AI is at the moment, it's like the perfect tool to be able to do that.
So walk us through what you're building on that front, and who are you working with? I know before we started the podcast, we talked a little bit about Auckland University, and you've been speaking AI event today that Microsoft and others been involved in, and Phil Sheehan was sort of saying that some pretty good things to share there. So tell us a little bit more.
Yeah, a lot of the strategy around dealing with making sure you have really good customer support is around automation, and it's quite a bit of that is around self-service. So self-service is things like having a really good knowledge base on your website, having content that's easily discoverable, having a search engine that works on your website that actually returns the results, having a 24/7 virtual assistant that you can talk to in any language you want across a variety of channels. So what we're finding is that if you employ a lot of self-service tools, then you've got your customers there, and customers are smart. They also want to know the answer straight away. They don't want to have to wait and call up and get put on hold. So if you employ a lot of these what we call tier 0 services, that will automatically reduce a lot of the load or traffic that's coming through to your frontline staff. And then from the frontline side, you've got a lot of productivity tools, things like summarization, searching and finding information, making that easier, automatically routing calls to the right people, triaging emails. So a lot of AI-assisted tools that's assisting frontline staff.
And how do you see this sort of playing out from a perspective of how much can we give over to the bots? How much can you give over when it comes to sort of customer service to artificial intelligence? And can you easily kind of define the lines that maybe you cross when it becomes a bad experience for for an individual to kind of deal with the technology when they're really trying to get through to a human? Because there's probably two sides to that. If everyone wants to get through to a human, then you don't get any benefit from the technology, and you've built out all these resources and people aren't taking advantage of it. So you do really want to push things forward when there is an appropriate knowledge base, article or something that can be really, really helpful. But yeah, different individuals will feel differently around interacting with technology. And I guess we've had aspects of that with, varying sort of customer service lines that we call. And on one side, you've got, there's an hour wait to get through to, Air New Zealand or whoever it is. On the other side, it's, the technology trying to help you and maybe, provide something instantly.
Absolutely right. I mean, nobody wants to call up a company, or if you ever run out of your Spotify subscription, just call up call up one of those businesses with a really heavy customer support line. Just listen to free music for an hour. I think part of this around how much to automate, how much to use AI, and how much to use human customer service, it very much depends on what your customers want and supporting that. So if for example, myself, I'm happy to self-service. I'm quite. I tend to prefer to go onto a website or to be able to talk to a bot and get what I need. My mum, on the other hand, no amount of automation will like satisfy her needs. She needs, if it's face to face, she'll go drive 20 minutes to a bank just to go wait in line and go talk to someone at the other end. So I think a lot of the technology is just enabling every type of customer, every type of user to have their preferred way of communication.
Yeah, I think that's a good way to put it. And I mean, what are you noticing in terms of those trends, in terms of who are the sorts of people that are happy to self-serve? Is it is it age? Is it quite clear to differentiate who those different groups are, and then from a technological perspective, do you then use the technology to look when when the phone rings and someone's trying to call through? Do you then go and look up and go, oh, that's the mobile number of Paul Spain, so we're going to kick Paul Spain into this direction. He can talk to that AI versus somebody else who maybe somebody else in the same family even who is more keen for a different sort of approach.
I think that personalization component is going to be a big part. And so being able to offer, say, Paul Spain the best channel in the way that you like to interact with a business. If it means Twitter and you just prefer to tweet a business and get your response back in 150 characters, and let's make sure that we're doing that. And at the moment, if you're looking at traditional contact center or customer requests, you've got email, phone as still the primary number 1, 2 forms or channels. But then you'll get, we talked about threads. I've no doubt that soon businesses will have to have an active threads team to monitor requests, customer inquiries or customer contacts through that channel. So what we're seeing is more and more channels are being created, and now there's very much an omni-channel strategy.
Yeah. And that's interesting. I've noticed a sort of rise in some of the platforms like WhatsApp becoming a channel that will communicate. You'll get a vendor, maybe it's a courier company, that will ping you a WhatsApp message when your package is kind of en route and so on. So these things just keep changing, don't they?
And it's to do with cultural preferences as well.
Mm.
I have family members. I'm Chinese, and kind of the default social media is WeChat. WeChat
Yes.
pretty much runs everything
Yeah.
in that ecosystem. And so if you want to have a presence to that community, you really have to think about, how do I bring in WeChat as part of my omni-channel strategy?
Yeah. Okay. So yeah, that's quite important, but it also potentially is quite challenging from a technology perspective that you've got to support just so many channels, and then if you don't, you're leaving some people out in the cold. Yeah, you're creating quite a few problems there. So what does what does that mean for you in terms of the technology you're developing? How do you support all these bits and pieces? It's just a lot more work, isn't it?
Well, yes and no, and you're correct that the old way would have been, for every single channel, let's go build out an AI for that. Now that's horribly inefficient, because then you've got to you got to manage your content on all of those channels, and essentially you're building cookie cut or repeat things on so many different ways, which is very inefficient. For us, we're really lucky to be able to leverage quite a few omni-channel tools, things like IBM Watson Assistant, which allows you to then build once and then connect, and then we can have the same brains, if you like, and then connect that to WhatsApp or TikTok or other
Yeah.
channels as they
Yeah.
come.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Cool. So how much lifting are you finding that IBM's Watson can do for you? Obviously, if you fire something at, say, the GPT-4 API, you can ask it, say, give you an answer on something, and then maybe wrap some constraints around it, because this one's for you know X, or this one's for WhatsApp, or what have you, and you'll have your different sort of length and formatting and other sorts of constraints, I guess. With Watson, is that sort of similar, or can you actually just mention the platforms and it knows, I guess, how to do it? And I guess, yeah, maybe GPT-4, you could probably do the same sort of things, mention the platforms, and it probably knows enough to be able to do some of that lifting as well.
Yeah. So what we're seeing is, you've got these kind of general purpose AI, like ChatGPT, that's built on GPT-4 as the large
Mm.
language model. Now they're very good in terms of answering general questions about who won the election in 2016, etc. Right, but they're not as good when it comes to very specific information about your business. So that's where we have to move to more of a enterprise level tool, where it's bring your own data. And so the customers that we work with very much bring their own knowledge bases, their own content that's unique about their business, and then you use AI to be able to learn from that content, and then reply and generate responses that's factually based on your content.
Mm. Mm. And I guess in addition to sort of the bigger vendors, we've got stuff like Llama from Meta. Is that, do you see that as an important part of the ecosystem?
I think well, because Llama, I think it's open source.
To some degree, I've seen some debate about whether it's truly open source, and
There's probably a
in terms of,
spectrum.
in terms of the particular yeah open source model that they're under. But yeah.
I think it's absolutely critical that we do have a marketplace or alternatives around selecting large language models, and there are I think I saw over 30 the other day, and it had ranked them around their specific tests that they perform on how well does this model work. And I think that's really important from an end user or safety perspective, because these models obviously are very expensive to create. And if we only have one or two key players who essentially own the market, then it just gives them a huge amount of power. And so I think that's what a lot of the open source communities have recognized, and then hence why there's a lot of movement to recreate open source versions of things like GPT-4.
Yeah. Look, I mean, I think the competition side is pleasing, but it's in many ways, I think, with large language models, if you're building something, you can probably connect into a whole bunch of them, right? So you're not actually necessarily forced to have all your eggs in one particular basket. It's not a huge leap to be tapping into multiple large language models, and then have your users decide and feedback where the best results are coming from. And I imagine that'll be part of what what we'll often sort of see as you actually put them side by side and see ultimately what delivers, and the decision will come. I don't know whether you can throw an AI over the top of you put one large language model over the top of a bunch of others, and then it adjudicates and works out for itself which one has given the best answer. So you don't even need the people to feed that back. But I think there's going to be a fair bit of fun to keep our developers busy and entertained for a while to come. But that probably brings us to the next topic, with sort of the role of AI, which is the software development world, and tools like Copilot coming through to actually start producing code for us. How do you see that sort of playing out over the next few years?
I just feel so excited about this potential, because if you look at how tools like generative AI can generate software or code, that's amazing. And just we've got our team at ElementX already using that to improve their own coding or productivity. But where I think a lot of the value will be creating software that has previously been uneconomical for a business to go and create.
Yes.
Things like in very niche applications, like there's a chatbot for every type of banking financial service, but there is no chatbot for like meat processing, or like, so there's a lot of industries that don't have the benefit of having a large market size, large spending power to be able to incentivize these startups or companies to be building tailored or custom software for them. And so I think this area of generative software, generative code is going to fill that gap. And it's going to fill that gap of really long tail applications.
Yeah, I agree. Actually, I think that's is going to be one of the key things. Obviously, those that are working on bigger developments and so on, that allows them to move faster with access to this type of technology. But yeah, there'll be scenarios where it just didn't make any sense from a business perspective to have the benefits of custom developed software, or something that would fit like a glove for a particular scenario. And I think we'll definitely see that changing more and more. And I think there's probably a whole range of other scenarios in terms of how AI potentially changes the picture in terms of keeping our code secure and monitoring it, as well as the sort of cybersecurity protection side, that I think we'll see a lot more going on that front. So yeah, lots of exciting things ahead, isn't there?
Absolutely. I think like one of the things I saw from recently, because Google's got their competitor to GPT. It's called Bard, and it's built on the Palm 2 model. And I went through their technical paper, and they talked, like, one of the features they talked a lot about was around commenting code, and be able to explain lines of code, what that meant, but explain it in different languages. So I see it as a real teaching assistant type tool
Yes,
to
yeah.
help software developers, engineers, especially those that are graduating or at the junior level, to be able to coach them and walk them through and that kind of way.
Yeah, it's a good point. Another really important area. Anything else you wanted to add before we wrap up?
Oh, thanks, Paul. It's been a really delightful conversation.
Yeah, great to have you on the show, and we'll certainly look forward, to hearing more on the ElementX story along the way. So definitely keep in touch on that front. Thank you everybody for joining us and for listening in, and of course a big thank you to our show partners: 2 Degrees, Spark, HP, 1NZ, and Gorilla Technology. All right, well, we'll catch you next week on the next episode of the New Zealand Tech Podcast. Thanks again for listening in. And if you've been watching the live stream, watching any of the video, of course, be sure to find the podcast in your audio podcast app so you can follow and subscribe and catch future episodes. And if you're listening to the audio, which of course is most, then do look out for us on the live streaming platforms, and that gives you a chance just to tap into the New Zealand Tech Podcast a little bit fresher. Most Tuesday afternoons we are streaming, and you'll find you can follow myself, Paul Spain, on LinkedIn to catch those streams. That's where we will often get viewers, but we're also with NZ Tech Podcast across what was Twitter, across X, Facebook, and YouTube. So certainly look us up on whatever platform you most enjoy consuming video on as well. All right, thanks. We'll catch you on the next episode, and thanks again, Daniel.
The New Zealand Tech Podcast, brought to you by Gorilla Technology, proactive and strategic IT.